Every fall, when Forbes publishes its annual list of the wealthiest Americans, you'll find familiar names from Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, and Elon Musk staking a claim to being the richest people on the planet. What some folks don't know is that there was a certain billionaire a century ago whose insane wealth would put theirs to shame. That billionaire in question is John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller amassed such a fortune that if he were still living today, he would top the Forbes list every year. So, how rich was he? What did he do with all that money? Let's find out. John D. Rockefeller was born in upstate New York in 1839. He was the oldest child of a traveling businessman who spent months away from home and, in fact, had multiple children with a different woman, whom he wanted to bring back home to his wife so that they could all live together. The young Rockefeller would learn as he grew up how to haggle with others to secure the best deal and how to make the most of every dollar he had. His family lived a nomadic lifestyle, as they rarely stayed in one spot for an extended period of time. To get by, John would labor for his neighbors or raise turkeys to make any money he could. When the family relocated to Cleveland, Ohio, he had the opportunity to attend a decent school, but he would later drop out to take a job as a bookkeeper. He was earning 50 cents per day, money which wasn't quite a lot, so he would assist other businesses on the side, but he wasn't prepared for what would happen. After 2 years of employment there, his employers refused to give him a tangible raise. So he made the decision to quit and began selling hay, grain, and other foods. He made sales of $500,000 in his first year, of which he only received a small portion as profits, but it was still a great accomplishment. John was only 18 years old. But he had every bank in Cleveland requesting a loan from him. In 1859, an event happened that would alter the course of his entire life. The first oil well in America was found about 100 miles east of Cleveland. 4,500 barrels of oil were extracted in a year, as a result, kicking off Pennsylvania's oil boom. But John soon understood that oil refining offered much greater financial rewards than oil drilling. Before finding oil, he saw a lot of individuals declare bankruptcy, so he decided the company was too risky for him. Instead, he would let others deal with the effort of locating the oil and would simply purchase it from them. John had to stand in line until 1863 for the government to construct a rail line linking the Pennsylvania oil resources to Cleveland. But once that line was completed, John was prepared with a long list of partners and banks prepared to support him. He also collected a team of skilled chemists and engineers who not only streamlined the refining process, but also identified numerous uses for petroleum byproducts. From there, his life would go on to take a dramatic turn with the formation of Standard Oil. John D. Rockefeller's journey to fortune took off with the Standard Oil Company. The accomplishment of Standard Oil made him the world's first billionaire and a well-known philanthropist, but it wasn't always that rosy for our man. During and after his death, Rockefeller had his fair share of both supporters and detractors. Wall Street admired his ability to make money, some journalists accused him of corrupt business tactics, and his charity organizations left a legacy of generosity. His Standard Oil firm grew to be the biggest oil refinery company in the United States. It was so large in size that the Supreme Court ordered its dissolution and division into another, more manageable business like ExxonMobil. Seems like some people got threatened by all that money. But if they thought the oil money was the only supply for the cash flow, then they were wrong. Besides his oil company, Rockefeller's enormous assets in gold and real estate contributed to his great fortune. The oil magnate accumulated up to $1.4 billion when he was alive. Now, I know you're probably thinking having slightly over $1 billion now isn't really spectacular, but you also need to take inflation into account. Rockefeller's modest $1.4 billion would be equivalent to a whopping $400 billion when adjusted for inflation. You know what you can do with all that money? To show off, you could just pay off the debt of some nations just for the hell of it. When you have unlimited money to stock thousands of banks or even purchase a fleet of them, the options are virtually limitless. So the question now is, how did Rockefeller spend the numerous millions he possessed? You know what? Let's start with some of the most intriguing and bizarre purchases, which have to do with him paying individuals to go fight in the Civil War in his place. The billionaire chose not to take part in the American Civil War when it began in 1861, despite his support for ending slavery. And how was he able to pull this off? Well, for starters, he was the family's primary provider and was given an exemption because his youngest brother was wounded in battle. So what he did was to employ replacement soldiers to fight the battle in his absence because his commodities business was growing at the time and many people relied on him for their livelihoods. Now, before you take your arms up in disgust, during the war, hiring soldiers in your place was a common practice, and because he had so much money, he could easily pay these replacement soldiers to fight his own battle. In addition to naming the university after himself, Rockefeller also made large gifts to educational institutions, including the Atlanta Baptist Female Seminary, which he named in honor of his wife, Laura Spelman, and her parents. 2 years later, the African American Women's Institution adopted the name Spelman Seminary in 1924. The college underwent another rebranding and is now known as Spelman College. These acquisitions ensured that Rockefeller and his wife each had educational institutions bearing their names. He also played a huge role as one of the founders of the University of Chicago. The philanthropist gave $35 million to the University of Chicago over the course of the first 10 years. He had complete faith in the other 3 university founders and never gave any instructions regarding the institution's structure. He only got involved when he thought they couldn't support themselves financially. Rockefeller, who was not used to losing a lot, suffered from alopecia and lost all of his hair on his body and head. It all began in his 40s when he lost all the hair on his head, mustache, and body. The billionaire's hair never came back, and in the early 1900s, he started wearing rotating wigs of varying lengths to give the idea that his hair was growing. It took a lot of effort and dedication, but if there's anyone who doesn't lack in either, it's this billionaire. If he could afford wigs and universities, a mansion suitable for royalty shouldn't be too out of reach for a guy of Rockefeller stature. In Pocantico Hills sits the John S. Rockefeller Estate, formerly known as Kykut. It is approximately 25 miles north of New York City. The now famous estate is a piece of art, complete with an astounding art collection and grounds that would blow your mind. Kykut, which was built between 1906 and 1913, housed 4 generations of the Rockefeller family. The mansion today is a National Trust for Historic Preservation historic site that is preserved and managed by the Rockefeller Brothers Fund as a center for its philanthropic operations. Rockefeller bought a number of houses and pieces of land in the neighborhood as soon as he and his son made the decision to live in Pocantico Hills. Then he either occupied the buildings himself with his family and his employees, or he rented them out. He formerly stayed in the Parsons Wentworth House in 1893, one of many homes he owned prior to the construction of his mansion. The family would later relocate to Kent House, a makeshift house when the estate burned down due to poor wiring. It would cost him about $40,000 to rebuild, but it's not like that amount was going to burn a hole in his pocket. Thomas autos were regarded as among the best available in 1902. They were so brilliant that the richest man in America purchased one for use on his main estate. If you think he was one who gets easily impressed by flashy cars, then you're wrong. The automobile was only used for a while before being stored in the estate's coach house by Rockefeller. Do you think Rockefeller's oil money will be able to compete with the tech money of this generation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.